Hello, dear beloveds. Well, I am back here today to talk about the number one way that I know to fast track our intuitive intelligence. And I just want to give you a moment to understand the difference between intuition, innate, latent, sixth sense, we all possess it, nobody's without it, versus intuitive intelligence, which is a living, breathing system that allows us to live in a continual flow state in communion with the infinite. So this is a very big point of difference in the work and the way that I teach intuition activation, is that you are never without intuition. We all possess it in equal measure. No one has it more than anyone else, but we are not necessarily living from it, and we are not necessarily attuned to it or aware of it. That doesn't mean it isn't there. And this is something that I think is very hard for us to wrap our heads around, because we meet people who may do this work professionally, or just people we know who seem to be highly intuitive, and we think that they've somehow got a special gift that we don't have. And it's often referred to as a gift, and that's actually a word that I do not like to be used in regards to intuition. Intuition is not a gift, it is just your innate birthright. Everybody possesses it. And if we start thinking about intuition as a gift, we fall into the trap of giving our power away to those people who we believe have intuition in higher measure. So instead of us actually believing and knowing and then activating our own intuitive intelligence, we go and look for the psychic or the healer or the person we think has more connection to intuitive intelligence than we do. When we stop thinking about it as a gift, and we actually start thinking about it as an innate inborn skill that we have to make the choice about developing, then the game changes, and intuition development stops being something that we're using in order to try and get other people's answers, but rather a way for us to live in a continual communion, a flow state with the infinite. So my task, my mission in this lifetime, and the Institute's mission, is to really change the conversation about intuition, and for us to move from an externalization of intuition, this idea that intuition is outside of us and it's something external, and that the answers that we're seeking belong in another realm or time and space, and that we need either someone else or a special magic crystal or a potion in order to access it, and to change that conversation so that we begin to look instead at intuition as an act of consciousness. So we as spiritual seekers are desiring to raise our consciousness, and when we do that, when we actually take the time through devotion and practices of intuition raising, we are raising consciousness. So intuition and consciousness are part of the same function. Our intuition is a very good sign that our consciousness is raising, because the closer we get to our natural God nature or our higher consciousness, the more likely we are to be able to hear, feel, see and know our intuition in every moment. So for me then, intuition and the way that I train people to access their intuition is really very much about changing our relationship with ourselves and changing our perception of what we are. In my last live, I talked about this in terms of spiritual self-esteem. Oh, hello, beautiful Kylie. How are you, my gorgeous? So instead of thinking about intuition as something that we have to do by practicing with a pendulum or oracle cards, or this constant looking outside of us for the trinkets and superstitions, what would it take for us to go into an internal partnership with our own consciousness to see, feel, hear and know the infinite one mind in every breath? That is our birthright, but it takes devotion and it takes consistency and it takes creating the conditions. So I want to share with you today the number one fast track for increasing your intuitive intelligence. And I have a lot of number ones, I'm going to have to say to you. There's a lot. If you look at my list, it's not really a vertical list, it's sort of horizontal, because there are lots of factors that interact together. And really my desire is to normalize intuition. So I want to give you a really practical insight today on how you can have a better relationship with your intuition that isn't going to require you to go anywhere, do anything, buy anything. It's really just about creating conditions in your own life that will allow your intuition to start being heard, felt, seen, or known. So we often hear in the Institute that people saying, I can't hear my intuition, I don't have a healthy, robust intuition, I'm always confused about what's my intuition, what's my fear, I don't know if it's my ego voice talking, and I want to kind of debunk all of that. There's a very good reason why you're reporting that, but the reason is not because your intuition isn't strong and robust and healthy, it's because you're not creating the conditions in which you can experience your intuition. And the 3 things that you need every damn day in order to grow your relationship with your intuition is stillness, silence, and solitude. So those 3 things are a beautiful precondition or a way for us to optimize our connection to our intuition. And if we don't have those things in our daily life, of course you're never going to hear your intuitive intelligence, because intuition is subtle. It's part of our subtle sensory system. It's not our dominant 5 senses. It's not in the world. It's 5D, higher consciousness, pure energy, it's vibration, and it communicates through those subtle realms rather than through the dominant, 5 senses. We may register our intuitive hits through our dominant senses, but that's not where they begin from or are cultivated from. We need to withdraw our attention from the superficial world in order to meet our intuition in a really powerful way. So we're withdrawing our attention from that which truly does not exist, and we won't go down that rabbit hole today, to go within to the world within the world, where we truly connect to those subtle realms and to that higher consciousness and access that language of intuition. The intuition is simply a language that is between us and the infinite one mind. It's not the end point. Ultimately, we won't need a language when we remember that we are part of the one mind. But if you think of intuition as a bridge between yourself and that infinite consciousness, then you're going to start changing your perception of intuition. You have this brilliant communication system to the one mind, that infinite field, the quantum field that contains all the knowledge that we need at any given moment. Stillness, silence, solitude, withdrawing our attention from the superficial world, slowing everything down and connecting into that higher consciousness is the only way that we are going to increase our intuitive intelligence. So unless you are having that experience every day, perhaps through meditation, perhaps through contemplation, perhaps through prayer, perhaps through chanting, perhaps through yoga, you will not begin to activate your intuitive intelligence beyond your innate intuition, remembering that intuitive intelligence is a state of being. It's that flow state, that communion between what we are and the God mind. So stillness, silence, and solitude change our physiology. We move out of that high beta brainwave state and we begin to move into the alpha and then the theta brainwave states, where we can access the subtle realms of consciousness, and we can actually move out of that incoherent fight or flight response, and we can move into the parasympathetic nervous system. These physiological changes need to happen because we're still very much, even though we're attaining and moving towards our 5th dimensional and beyond nature, we're still anchored into a 3D reality, and we need to get this physiology on board with our pursuit of a higher state of intuition. So we have to address the needs of the body, and we have to remind the body that it is safe to go into these states. The ego will sense this as change and it will become disruptive. You may find that when you sit to meditate, you get itchy, or your thoughts start racing, or suddenly you have to pee, or suddenly you just feel this overwhelming sense of urgency that there's something you forgot to do. All of these are tricks of the ego trying to keep you away from that stillness, silence, and solitude. And so it's our job, like, parenting a toddler, to just let there be some very clear ground rules and some boundaries. Not sure that works with parenting toddlers, actually, maybe a little bit older than that, but we have to set some boundaries, and we have to say to our body, you're safe to be here, and I'm going to do everything I can to assure you of that. But don't jump and move every single time your body twinges. Of course, if you're in pain, adjust your physical body, but if you're just itchy and irritated, it's a very good chance that's your ego using the body to distract you from this deeper state of consciousness, because it knows that when you start to access your intuition, you are going to change your mind about yourself and become less wedded to your ego self. So the pursuit of intuition is always about the pursuit of a higher state of consciousness, a higher state of being. And if you don't want that, then don't go pursuing your intuition, because it's inevitable that as we pursue this path, we're going to learn that we are infinite, one-minded consciousness, and that is the gift of intuition. Intuition in itself is simply a way to attain that truth. Stillness, silence, and solitude. Put them into your life every day. I don't care how you have to do it. I don't care how busy you are. Everyone can make the choice to do this, and to have this in a structured, regular way is the fastest way for you to fast track your awakening intuition.